Okay, so the previous week we went over the different methods of purification of impurities, and today وسائل تطهير المتنجسات. Today we'll go over the different liquids which could purify impurities. So the author, he writes, وَتَطْهُرُ النَّجَاسَ عَنِ الثَّوْبِ وَالْبَدَنِ بِالْمَاءِ وَبِكُلِّ مَاءٍ مُزِيلٍ كَالْخَلِّ وَمَاءِ الْوَرْدِ. Okay, this is interesting. So he's saying that any type of najasa, any type of impurity, which could be on the body, on the clothes, that could be purified with water. Or perhaps any kind of liquid which has the potential to remove najasa and any impurity. So the examples that he has given is vinegar, right? Vinegar, rose water. So you can possibly analogize that anything that has the potential to clean, right? And it's pure in of itself. It's pure in of itself. Then you can use that. You may use that to remove impurities. You may use that to remove any type of najasa. Now, this is when the najasa, when the impurity is on the body or it's on the clothing. What if it's on something that doesn't have the potential of taking in najasa, meaning that it doesn't go into the fiber, right? It doesn't go into the fiber. So for example, if there is, the clothing that we wear, it isn't as if the clothing is waterproof, right? So you have to wash it. But what if the najasa is on something that is waterproof, such as khuf, right? So the example that they've given over here is khuf, leather socks. Or shoes, right? So he's saying وَيَطْهُرُ الْخُفْ وَنَحْوُهُ بِالدَّلْكِ مِنْ نَجَاسَةٍ لَهَا جِرْمٌ وَلَوْ كَانَتْ رَطْبَةً. So he's saying over here that the footgear, right? The footgear, leather socks, or anything that is similar to that, you can purify that by just rubbing it against the ground, the soil, right? And provided that impurity is in a tangible, solid state, even if it is wet, even if it is moist. So you can, just rub it on the ground, on the soil, on the grass. This would be sufficient for purification. And sometimes it happens, we're walking, and we might step into some kind of impurity with our shoes, right? With our footgear. So simply wipe it, even if it is wet, wipe it on the ground, and all traces are removed. It would be considered as pure. That footgear would be considered as pure. Number 3, وَيَطْهُرُ السَّيْفِ وَنَحْوُهُ بِالْمَسْحِ. So he's bringing the example over here, the author, that what about swords, metal objects, knives, right? Knives, anything like that. For example, when we're slaughtering an animal, right? So swords, the blood, this is considered as najas. Blood is considered as najas, or maybe if you're a physician, right, use a scalpel. So is that, right? How does one clean that? So these things can be purified. So swords, anything that is made of iron, or steel, or copper, utensils. These are purified by simply wiping them. Right? Either you can wipe them on the ground, or you can wipe them with a cloth. Right? And the condition is that najasa should not have, or rather, the item that you're wiping, it shouldn't be something that you could penetrate, that it can't seep in. If it seeps in, then it's a problem. Then the ruling is going to vary. And there are many examples that the scholars have given that why this is the case. Moving forward, وإذا ذهب أثر النجاسة عن الأرض وجفت جازت الصلاة عليها دون التيمم منها ويطهر ما بها من شجر وكلء قائم بجفافه. So the author is writing that when any type of traces, let's say there's najasa, there's impurities on the ground, if that disappears, if that goes away from the ground, meaning that the color of the ground goes back to normal, or there's no smell of najasa, maybe there's urine and there's no smell of urine over there, the ground becomes dry. You can't see any traces of the impurity. So prayer is now permitted on that very ground. But there's a difference, that although prayer may be permitted because there's nothing visible, right? You're not going to bend down and smell it. This is not what the Sharia demands from us. Otherwise, this would be difficulty, this would be haraj. So the Sharia wants to make things easy. So it's not telling you, it's not demanding that you bend down and you smell it and you take a microscope and start, looking at the ground. It's not what the Sharia demands. If you see that it looks clean, then it will be assumed as clean. But you can't do tayammum from it. You can't do tayammum from that place. So tayammum is not permissible from that ground. Likewise, plants, trees that are on the ground, that are on the earth, standing grass, they become pure from najasa when they become dry. So if they become dry, they become pure. So if there is najasa, and then after a while you see that, there's no traces of najasa, it becomes dry, then this will be considered, this will be deemed as pure. وَتَطْهُرُ نَجَاسَةٌ اسْتِحَالَتْ عَيْنُهَا كَأَنَّ صارت ملحا أو احترقت بالنار. So he's saying that najasa is purified when its composition becomes something else. And the example that he's given over here, this is interesting. كأن صارت ملحا أو احترقت بالنار. That a pig becomes salt. A pig becomes salt. So what it's talking about is when something becomes denatured. When something becomes denatured. Or, for example, if something changes because fire has been introduced. So, if something becomes, and there are many examples like this, like for example, the figs that you eat. Right? Everybody knows what figs are, right? Anjeer. Right? So every single fig, and you can confirm it, or people who are into horticulture, they probably already know. But every fig has a wasp inside. That fig has a wasp inside. Why is it halal? It's halal because it's no longer a wasp. It's denatured. It is no longer a wasp. It has become denatured. Same thing with wine that has become vinegar. Wine is haram. It's najas, right? It's najas. But you leave it to ferment longer, or you introduce it to heat. What happens to that wine? Red wine, white wine. It becomes vinegar. Thus, the composition of it has changed. It becomes halal. And this is according to the Hanafi madhab, that it becomes halal. Same thing, if a pig falls into a salt mine, and becomes salt, it's salt now. Right? So salt is halal, this is permissible. So it has become denatured. And there's many instances where perhaps fatwa must be given on this. For example, the medications that many people use, such as magnesium stearate. This is a very common ingredient, magnesium stearate. If you look at the medications that you take, pills or whatever other medications, one of the ingredients is magnesium stearate. This can either be synthetic or it could be taken from animal. But the composition of that animal has changed to such a degree that it is no longer an animal. It is no longer an animal. The composition has changed into something else entirely. So this is what we would call, it has become denatured. Thus, it is halal. We'll stop over here and continue next week.
So this, when you say denatured here means must be a natural change or?
Yeah, denatured means that it's no longer in its original form. It is no longer in its original form. The composition of it has changed on a molecular level.
So would that make gelatin?
Yeah, gelatin.
No, gelatin would be a problem because gelatin, when I asked this question to one of my friends, he's a biochemist and he works in the food industry. So he likened gelatin to putting the substance of the animal into a blender and making it into puree. So no, the chemical composition has not changed enough. This is his understanding.
Because I'm talking about the gelatin that's, for example, in various products.
Yes.
Like we see gelatin in this multivitamins or something. There's like composition.
The composition has not changed enough.
It's not really.
No, not enough. Where it could be called something else.
Well, if it is gelatin,
Yeah.
it is gelatin.
And so what about you said wine? You mentioned wine is najis. What is alcohol najis?
Alcohol itself. See, in the Hanafi mazhab, wine and anything from grapes and dates, raisins, this would be categorically haram. This falls under the definition, this strict definition of what constitutes khamar, khamimra. Any other alcoholic beverages, although they are impermissible and haram, but they will not be classified as najas. This is according to the Hanafi mazhab. And the reason behind this is that even though it's safe to consider it as, najas, fatwa has been given in instances. For example, in India, this was pre-partition. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi, this was during his time, where they used ink that had alcohol inside, right? So he penned a long fatwa which allowed usage of that specific ink, of that particular type of ink, citing the Hanafi texts. But he himself would not use it. He issued this fatwa because it was so common amongst the Muslims. And if he had stopped them, then this would have become problematic. But he himself, he would refrain from it. He would not use that ink which had alcohol.
So what I was asking is like alcohol on clothes, that does make the clothes impure.
It's better to wash. It depends. What kind of alcohol? Is it synthetic? Synthetic alcohol?
No, I'm talking about the socially, the one people consume.
Yeah, no, that would be.
That
To be really technical, no, it would not. But it's always better to wash because of the issue being an issue where there is legitimate ikhtilaf. It's always better to err on the side of caution because the other madhahib, they do deem it as najas. So it's better to wash it. But if you want to get really technical, in the Hanafi mazhab, no, it would not be considered as najas. Specifically, alcohol made from anything other than dates, raisins, grapes. But out of deference for the other madhab, always better to wash.
So perfumes which have alcohol is...
That's synthetic.
Some of the alcohol is made from barley.
Yes, barley, wheat,
Barley wheat.
yeah.
So barley wheat alcohol is wine is also najis.
Mm.
Wine is najis. Simple as that. Alcohol is najis.
the synthetic alcohol if you use like using.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah,
There's
that's
issue
fine.
there.
Yeah. Synthetic alcohol is okay. There's none. Yeah. The one that they use for swabs and in
Yeah.
perfumes. This is all fine.
So,
The question is that
alcohol and all those.
sometimes it's naturally occurring as well.
Mhm.
Sometimes the alcohol is naturally occurring in baked goods. In baked goods, it's naturally occurring. That's fine because it's less than 0.5. It's naturally occurring. You have no control over it. It just happens, right? And then there's other alcohol which is put into products as an ingredient to preserve that product, such as vanilla extract. So, I mean, you have to look at the content, because the vast majority of the content of that alcohol, if you use it, it evaporates because of the heat, and you're not going to get drunk from it, because you'll probably die before you get drunk because you drink so much. So that's not going to even happen. So, because vanilla extract is used as an ingredient, women use it a lot, right? Because they need to extract the flavor in their baking.
What about when you cook, put alcohol, but any alcohol with rice during cooking,
So that will become religious.
Yeah.
What is that?
Which kind of alcohol?
Or depend on what's the
Yeah, again, like according to the Hanafi mazhab, wine is, if you use wine, that's going to be haram. It's najas. It becomes najas.
Even later on when it cooks, where rice become
Yeah. It would still. I mean, it's a good question.
Still there.
Yeah. It would become najas.
So it's very common for
Yeah,
the
but-
cakes to use rum and.
Yeah.
So those are. I mean, I know it's haram, but I'm.
Yeah. So again, the rum cake would be problematic
Yes, it is.
because it has not been heated enough to that degree. It's not heated to that degree where it's completely evaporated. Not to mention that the najasa still remains.
Some particles still there.
Yeah, like
Molecular
rice
formula
wine
is
is
not
cooked
changed.
on high
It's
heat.
still there.
Yeah.
The rice wine, they use rice wine in
Yeah.
Chinese products.
Yes.
Rice wine as cooking ingredients.
Yes.
And they heat it up quite a bit.
Yes.
But
But
wine
it's
is
not.
wine.
Yeah. It's still gonna stay. Still.
Wine is wine.
So one more question. It was about blood. So you said blood is najas. So
Yes.
For example, when sometimes you get your blood drawn, and then you notice later on that even though initially they clean it, some of it has come on your shirt, like the
Small amount.
small
Yeah.
amount.
It's negligible.
So it's okay. Does it break the wudu? And B, on the shirt, if it came to does the shirt needs to be cleaned or washed or changed?
So I would. So in this kind of situation, in the Hanafi mazhab, when blood does come out, when blood is drawn, it does break the wudu. This is according to the Hanafi mazhab and Hanbali mazhab. It breaks the wudu. 100% it breaks the wudu. No doubt. If it comes onto the clothing, and it's a small amount, less than a dime, you can offer salat in those clothes. That najasa will be overlooked.
Better
Now-
to wash it.
Always better to wash it. But if you want to get really technical and you want fatwa, then it's okay. Now, there is, however, a difference where, let's say someone's elderly, right? Difficult for the elderly person to do wuzu, or if someone is diabetic. The Hanafi mazhab, they do make a distinction between dam-e kharij and dam-e mukhraj, which translates to blood that comes out and blood which is drawn. So if blood is drawn, right? Because diabetic, so then the wudu does not break. And this is strictly for those people who have to do this multiple times. This fatwa only is applicable to them. This is the exception, not the norm. That's what I want to say. It's the exception, not the norm.
for the liquid that can use to purify the
Yes, like rose water. Yeah.
tea
Yeah, tea is fine too. Yeah.
and
Tea, Pepsi.
this just for the najasa.
Yeah.
But still for the wudu and for the
Yeah.
wudu,
Wudu, it has to be my mutlaq.
pure.
Yeah, it has to be. Well, what we went over at the beginning. It has to be.
That's true.
Yeah.
You cannot be done with Pepsi.
And this one is with condition or no conditions. For example, if you have the water, pure water,
Yeah.
and then you have the rose water, and then you want to use the rose water to clean up.
That's fine.
Still fine.
Yeah. It's fine. Because it's a cleanser. It cleans. Anything that cleans, pretty much. And under this comes dry cleaning as well.
Because then done with petrol and diesel.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Moreover, rose water is a plant-based thing.
Petrol, it's not.
It's not animal-based, it's plant-based.
So one more
Right?
question.
Yeah.
During Salah, if the blood comes out, then because the wudu breaks, therefore the Salah is gone, is that the rule?
Yes.
So for example, you have an old scab
Yeah.
and unknowingly you scratch and you don't know what happened by the time you're done.
Yeah.
You realize that there was blood and it's on your clothes too. So does that invalidate the Salah and the wudu and both have to be repeated after cleaning the blood?
Yeah. Because if the blood remains on the same place, then it's fine. You're okay. But once it moves from that location and goes to a place where wudu is fard, right? So yes, the wudu breaks, you would have to repeat the salat. And you would have to repeat the wudu.
So in those days during the war, how they used to manage because they get cuts and all that, right?
So they would fall under the category of udhr, ma'dur. They would be ma'dur. They would have concession that if they were unable to keep their wudu for the duration of one salat, or to be more specific, 4 rakats, which are fard, then they would be classified as ma'dur. They would pray salat as is, as they are. So we went over this section I think 3-4 weeks ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
Ma'dur.
For the liquid, other than mutla, the water, mutla, and
Yeah.
rubbing on the ground or the soil,
Yes.
this include the heavy najasa?
Yeah. Ghaliza. Yeah. Any type of najasa.
Any type of najasa?
Yeah. Any type. Yep.
And like when you're traveling, you sometimes you pray with your shoes on.
Yeah.
You don't remove the shoes. But if you have been to a toilet or something and you come out, can you still pray the shoes dry from the water?
So in the Hanafi mazhab, if the shoes don't allow you to do sujood, then you must take them off. You have to take the shoes off because they're not malleable. Shoes are not malleable, especially if you're wearing boots, right? In the winter, those boots are not malleable. They don't bend. One of the requirements is that the feet, they have to touch the ground. So if they're not touching the ground, this would be problematic.
But I think his question is, let's say you have those loafers that are malleable,
Even then,
Soft
yeah.
one.
Even then, this would be an issue. It's only allowed in khuf, like duck shell socks, khuf leather socks, that kind. Yeah.
So that's Hanafi madhab, right?
Yes.
And the other madhabs differ on that. That's the reason so many people pray with the shoes on. Is that?
Other mazahib, they don't differ. I know the Shafi mazhab. I asked Sheikh Muhammad about the Shafi mazhab, and he straight told me that it's fard in the Shafi mazhab to put the feet onto the ground. If one does not, then the salat is invalid. So that would be a barrier. Wearing shoes and offering salat, this would be a barrier. So I know this is for certain in the Hanafi mazhab and Shafi mazhab.
We've seen this, like people in snow or somewhere, when they're praying, they're like still having the shoes on.
The reason is during the protests in Albany, like everyone, I would say 70% they were all with the shoes praying.
Yeah, because everybody is a mufti.
But I think, okay. So in all mazhab is the same. You have to take out the
To my knowledge, I know with a certainty that the Shafi mazhab, Maliki mazhab, and Hanafi mazhab is the same. They're very strict when it comes to placing the foot on the ground. I'm not familiar with the Hanbali madhab.
Well, present your salah in the best possible way you can. Yes, that's right. In the best possible way.
Subhanallah.
Any question? Very good, intelligent question. We learn from this question.
Sufyan.
I don't have the question. No, when there is an intelligent question, there will be appropriate answer too. So that's how we know. And only a person who answers there are only two. Either he couldn't understand or he is really intelligent person. Only an intelligent person can ask questions. Everybody does not ask questions. You will say something.